Good morning, friends. I'm out in the garden. I was just taking care of the chickens and I keep catching my eye on things that are ready to harvest. So let's go ahead. It's Saturday morning. It's super early. Josh and I are going to go to the new house and work all day. But I want to go ahead and get all of our garlic scapes harvested. It's getting harder to find them in this jungle, but they're still in here. Once you think you're done, look for another 5 or so minutes because there's always the stragglers. Oh, I see 2 more already. A garlic scape is the flowering head of the garlic, and you want to pick it so that it puts the energy into creating a big head, not a flower. We have 1 elephant scape, and that is our garlic scape harvest this year. I also found over here, look at all these beautiful strawberries. I was already snacking on a bunch of them, but I think I found more that are ready to harvest. I absolutely love my green stalks for my strawberries this year. It's been fantastic. I see a couple more. I'm gonna let that one go for a little bit. I think I already ate all the ones that are ready. Let's see. Oh, someone's been snacking on that one. In my garlic bed, the weeds have gotten crazy because of all this rain we've had this year. So I'm gonna just pick a few while I'm sitting here this morning. There's also a mole that has gotten into my garlic bed, which I'm not super pleased with, but it is what it is. So I'm going to take a second, weed this, just so that it looks a little bit cleaner. Not perfect, but it's looking a whole lot better. And I just gave all the weeds to the chickens. I think this is our garlic scape harvest. I've been harvesting garlic scapes as I see them. So I have more of them in my freezer. And when I have a bunch in my freezer, then I'm going to go ahead and we'll preserve them. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. Now I see that there's peas that are ready. My husband's been asking for peas. And I think I said it in the garden tour that I've been eating all of them when I see them. But I think there's enough finally to harvest because he keeps being like, my friends are bringing peas in from their gardens. How come we don't have any? I'm like, because I've been eating them. And now I think I have enough to bring a bunch inside too. All my peas should look like this. And that should be all along this entire trellis. But bunnies kept eating them, and so the plants keep having to start over. But even with all the bunny damage, there are still plenty of peas to be had. So learning to share is always a good thing. I planted sugar snap peas and snow peas. Oops, gotta pick that one up. Last year, I did not realize there was a difference between shelling peas and sugar snap peas. I thought peas were peas, and I only planted shelling peas. And you do not want to try to chew on a shelling pea because the outside part is super, super fibrous, and it becomes this, like, kind of like celery, but worse in your mouth when you're chewing it. And it takes a lot. I'm talking, I have a 30-quart bowl. It was completely filled with peas, and I got 1 gallon of peas from it. And the cool thing about sugar snap peas, especially for a home gardener, excuse me while I eat this. It is so good. Is you get a lot more bang for your buck. You can eat the whole entire thing. And so the actual amount of poundage of food you get is so much more. And organic peas are relatively cheap to buy from the grocery store. So that's kind of my plan moving forward, is I will grow a ton of sugar snaps so we can eat the whole thing. And then I'll buy my regular like shelling peas at the grocery store. Even if I had the largest garden in the world, I don't know if I would grow shelling peas anyway, because it took me 5 or 6 hours to shell the peas by hand. I don't know if you can buy a machine to do it, and that's not good time well spent. I would rather grow something like a tomato or a pepper where you just get a little bit more bang for your buck. So that's just my thoughts on peas. These are the sugar snaps and they are so good. Look how plump they are. Look how plump this one is. Absolutely stunning. Perfect. I just took care of chicken chores, which means I got a really big harvest of eggs. So I'm gonna go inside and wash these. It's the 4th of July weekend and I'm gonna give a bunch of these away to some friends and family. I'd say not too shabby of a harvest for coming out here just to do chicken chores, and I wasn't really expecting to harvest anything. And I think we're in harvest season, which is pretty exciting. And so now I need to go inside. I need to take a shower and get ready for the day. I just got ready and I just washed a ton of dishes. 2 days ago, I did a big bulk freezer cooking, and yesterday I wasn't able to do any sort of kitchen work because we had at the new house some new drywall fixed. So I'll show you that when we get up there. I was up there yesterday and I can show you the before. I'm at the new house. I'm here bright and early meeting the contractors. There's a couple things they're doing today. Well, I guess it's just one thing, but in a couple different areas. This closet in this room, or in the bonus area, was never drywalled. Well, they drywalled it and then they taped it and they never finished the texture or anything. So this is gonna come down and they're gonna redo that. We figured we might as well get this project done before we paint and before we move in, because there's no time better than when there's nothing in it. This room as well, they did the same thing where it's hard to see on film, but you can see every single tape where the drywall, this is one piece of drywall, this is another piece of drywall. They taped it and then they kind of textured it and they painted it, but they never fully finished it. So this unfortunately all has to come down. This is gonna be more expensive for them to fix this because they kind of half-did it versus in here. This is a massive closet. I haven't shown you guys this yet. Let's see if I can turn the light on. I'm gonna put things like Christmas decorations, maybe our skis, stuff that I want to keep safe from like mice and things like that in here. And this is what they basically painted over. So this is what it was in those two areas that they painted. And this is gonna be a lot more affordable to fix because they're basically just finishing it versus having to kind of like redo it, which is a bummer, but I'm excited just to have it done right and have it done in the first place because it was never done. I don't even know if it's supposed to take 1 day, 2 days, I have no idea. All I knew is that I was supposed to be here at this time of the morning to let them in. And I think once they get started, like I've mentioned, I have a family member that's pretty close. Instead of going all the way to the other house, I'm gonna go over there and sit and edit. I filmed a huge freezer video, which I'm really excited, cooking video, because I'm super excited because I have none of those in my pantry. And going into this weekend is gonna be nice. I'm not gonna have to do any cooking because I also made sides. So I need to go edit that, but we're just gonna wait for them to come and I'll show you progress as it comes along. It's early. Oh, I left my coffee in here. I better get it. And then when we were up there this afternoon, I'm gonna show you the after. It was drying last night, so I didn't film anything. One thing is I'm really disappointed. This is just reality here. I really try not to have food waste. It's one of my biggest pet peeves, but I'm not perfect at it. These croissants we bought together and we were eating them for chicken salad, and this morning I was gonna make an egg croissant, like a bread pudding with Parmesan cheese and cheddar cheese and this croissants and ham and mustard, and it was gonna be like a savory bread pudding. Well, these are moldy. They weren't moldy last night when I brought them back from the other house. And this morning, there's fuzz on the top. So if you guys don't have chickens and you thought about getting chickens, get yourself chickens, because one way to help with that guilt of food waste, because there's 5 croissants in there, and we ate 6 of them because we had a lot of chicken salad last weekend. I was planning to freeze them, but I never got to it. And so now I've just wasted those croissants. But they're not gonna be totally wasted because I am gonna turn them into eggs. I'm gonna give them to my chickens. And that is the one way that I alleviate some of that food waste guilt, is I figured I'm just creating more rich, delicious eggs, because chicken fed on croissants sounds pretty decadent to me. And then I can share the love with my friends and family because I have an abundance. 11 chickens for 2 people is way too many. I want to finish getting this kitchen kind of tidied up. We're going to pack up a lunch. The reality of doing a big freezer cooking day is a lot of dishes. And I normally try to get to them the day after, but I didn't because of things in life. So we're going to get to them this morning, and there's nothing wrong with that. Since I've emptied my counter, I'm going to go ahead and get some more of these dishes I can hand wash out of my sink onto this counter to dry. So later this evening, I can put them away. One thing that I've been learning through all this craziness that is my life right now is that done is better than perfect, and a little bit that's not done is better than none done at all, and just having grace and being okay with that. You know, everyone has a busy life. We all do, and we all have busy lives just because of different circumstances, and nothing can ever be, you know, perfect or to our most perfect ideal or standard. And just learning to have grace and be okay with where we are in the moment is just a really good thing to learn, and it's something that this whole thing has been teaching me. And I know at one point life will calm down a little bit, and it's just a matter of knowing what part of life you're in and what's going on, and realizing that circumstances do dictate some things that go on in our life. So even though I don't get this kitchen completely spick and span, I am grateful for the progress that I made, and that my sink is a lot less empty than it was before, and just knowing that we're just working to do our best and be okay with the rest. Look how much better that looks. Is it perfect? No, I still have dirty dishes in my sink, and that is okay. Overall, the whole kitchen looks a lot better. I could decide to wash those by hand if I wanted, but I'm not. I've got my dishwasher going. When I get home tonight, Josh or I will unload it and we can load those in there. So I'm gonna pack up our lunch because all Josh has eaten today are peas. He took all the peas that I picked and brought them up to the new house. I don't think he's gonna eat all of them. Maybe he is. If he is, that's fine. But we need some sort of food when we get up there so we have energy. So what I have here are some enchiladas that we made during the freezer cooking, and I actually cooked up some of the enchiladas for dinner that night. And so I have 2 of them in containers that we can eat for breakfast / lunch. By the time I get up there, it will be lunchtime. I also food prepped some corn salad, and I'm gonna bring this up there too, but I need to transfer it from this bowl into here so that it travels well. I'm actually gonna go ahead and hand wash this dish right now. I lied, I just rinsed that dish out and put it in the sink. I've got a couple dish towels I'm gonna bring up to the new house because we don't have any clean ones up there. This is the pile of wood and some trim I get to move up to the new house today. We almost exclusively heated our house this winter with wood. We had a lot of it. I bought this wood pre-cut. This is something that I do not want to leave behind. The new house, we probably won't heat with wood exclusively. There is a fireplace that has a fan, which I'm excited about, but that will be more for ambiance. But this is definitely very valuable to me, and we are going to move it. And it's true what they say about wood, it heats you twice, when you move it and when you heat with it. I do have one more pile of firewood in the shop. I don't think we're gonna get to fit both those piles into the truck. We might. If we do, awesome. But it's perfect out here today. It's only probably about 60 degrees, so it's gonna be a good day to go ahead and move this right now. I think that is as full as I want to fill it, which means I didn't get the trim in, and that's okay because he's got other stuff he can work on in the meantime. And I found our rake that was hiding behind it, and Josh was looking for this all winter. It's a bag, like a canvas bag that you use to bring wood in, and that was also tucked behind the wood, so I'm glad I found that. Even though this isn't very much, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it because, like I said, I do have probably about half this amount of wood that's in the shop that we need to bring. And when you put it in the back of a bed of a truck, it definitely looks like a lot more than it did when it was stacked up neatly. I think I bought 9 truckloads like this to heat our house, and clearly it probably took about 8. And we only have to heat our house with wood from about October, and the last time I lit it was the end of March, except for we did have one random snow April 13th, and I lit the fire then. Other than that, there's only those few months that we actually have to heat because we stay relatively mild in the winter here. And we stay relatively mild in the summer here too. That's why it is July 2nd today, and it's overcast, and I think it's only in the 60s. It probably will, the clouds will probably burn off and it'll probably get into the 80s this afternoon, but for now it's perfect. I just gave the chickens the croissant, and it made me think of the show Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmerman on the Travel Channel. I used to love that show. And he used to talk about food tastes like what food eats. And so if my chickens eat croissants, then their eggs sure probably will be delicious. They don't seem super interested in the croissants, except for 2 of them. And that might be because they just had half of a rhubarb cake that was left over from that party from the other day. What can I say? We have very well-fed chickens around here. Oh my goodness, friends, it's just exploding out here. I love it. If you watched my garden tour video, this bed was one big weedy mess. And I came out here and I cleaned it up. I did go ahead and leave all the pink celery and the beets that... Oh, there's a frog. Frogs are great for the garden. I can't see it any... Oh, there... Nope. Can't see it anymore because they eat bugs. But I left the volunteer beets and pink celery, and we'll see what happens. I was extremely discouraged about this bed. There are a few more weeds in here, but it looks a whole lot better. Because bunnies keep coming down here and mowing down these black beans. And I think the weeds were a good thing. Half the weeds in here were really prickly, pokey weeds, and it drowned out my black beans. And I almost 100% gave up on these black beans. But I think what that did is it got the bunnies to realize they didn't want to be next to all the pokey weeds. And now they're starting to come back. And you know, these black beans might actually survive. You know, there's some new growth in there. They might come back to produce some beans for us. So there's obviously some that are, you know, this one is obviously dead. But I think overall, this could be a comeback bed. I'm always rooting for the underdog. Another thing, oh goodness, look at what my chicken's doing. She's so cute. What are you doing up there? What are you doing up there? What are you doing? What you doing? I'm bothering her. She's probably relaxing. Like I said, if you can get chickens, if your neighborhood or whatever will allow it, they're easier than you think, especially if you get one of those big feeders I have and a big waterer. You only have to feed and water them once a week. They become really, really easy. Oh, I wanted to show you these. This was also extremely overgrown. You could not decipher where the black beans were in here. There are a few more weeds that are coming up that I can take care of. But I just spent the afternoon out here by myself cleaning it up, and these green beans are starting to flower, which means those are future beans, which is just so encouraging. I'm just so encouraged about how this is turning out. I love being out here. I'm excited what the garden this year holds for us. Oh my goodness. I wasn't sure what squash this was, and this is one from seed we started together, and it looks like a yellow one. I really hope that's a green zucchini and not a winter squash, but oh, that looks like a yellow one too. That's great. More weeds. And I don't know what that guy is yet, but they're looking a lot better than they did the other day. An update with this cilantro that went to seed. I went ahead, I pulled it, and I'm using it as ground cover to help with some of the weeds. I didn't have time to get in here and weed these guys, but I think that's okay. It's starting to sprinkle. Just from being out here the other day with you guys, that was, what day was that? Today is Saturday. We were out here, oh gosh, I can't remember. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. There are so many things that are exploding. Like, look at this nasturtium. It's starting to creep out. I didn't have any of my nasturtiums get this big last year. Look at this beauty. She's climbing and she's walking into the walkway, and I just want her to explode down this way or this way, whatever way she wants to grow. I was honestly a little discouraged about how the garden was progressing. I have this weird thing. Every single year I plant a garden, I have this gardener's doubt, gardener's anxiety. I don't know what it is, but I fear my abilities to produce food. And I think that happens every year. So this is my third year, happened this year. I was like, I'm not gonna get anything. The bunnies, the weeds, the slugs, everything is gonna take over. And sometimes you just have to sit back, relax, let nature take its toll. I do lose a lot of things, I kill a lot of things, but my goal is put a bunch of seeds in the ground and know that some are gonna be for the birds, some are gonna be for the slugs, some are gonna be for the bunnies, some are gonna die, and hopefully some are gonna be for Josh and I, and friends and family. So now I've got the truck all loaded up. We got lunch packed, the dogs, the kitchen nice and clean. I knew there was a chance that this truck would not start. We just replaced the alternator. My brother-in-law did it for us. We paid him to do it, but the battery is really bad too, and he thinks that a solenoid is bad. So Josh told me there was an 80 or 50% chance after I loaded this truck it would start, and it's not starting. So we got half that project done. We will finish it another day. We have another truck available to us. My brother-in-law, who is helping us fix the truck, is out of town, and I could go get his truck and put this wood in there. Not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not moving this wood 3 times. So we're going to go ahead and get in my car, and I'm just going to switch my focus onto doing other tasks at the new house. There's always things that can be done. And this truck is going to sit here until my brother-in-law fixes it, because I'm not moving it. I did decide to go ahead and harvest a bunch of lettuce, because lettuce, some of it's starting to look like it's about to bolt. So I want to try to make sure we eat as much of that as possible before that happens. I'm going to transfer the dogs, myself, the lunch and everything into my car. And we're still going to head to Lowe's and see if we can find, or if we can order those doors. You know, I was just thinking, I am really glad my car did not start, or the truck didn't start at my house, not at Lowe's. How much more annoying would that have been if that was here instead of there? Because then I could just switch cars, no big deal. So my husband, Josh, put one thing on the list he wants me to grab for him, so we're gonna get that, and then we're gonna check on doors. This is it. I'll show you what we need this for when we get to the house. Who knew ordering doors could be so complicated? There's only one guy at Lowe's that can do it. He was literally on his lunch break. He'd only been on his lunch break for 2 minutes. He came back to help me, and then he's going to his lunch break and he's gonna finish the order later. Oh, I'm so grateful that he was able to do that, because we already know that it's gonna take about 6 to 8 weeks to get the doors, and we were here last week and he wasn't here, and so feels good to get that done. Now we're gonna buy this and we're gonna head up to the new house finally and help Josh.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm glad I checked my phone before I got in the car, because there's one more thing Josh needs. I just got up here, and that spray foam that I just bought is like window door spray foam, and there's this little bug that I had never seen before, and apparently they're very prolific up where we are. They're called a strawberry weevil, and half of the trim in this sunroom area was caulked, half of it wasn't. Anywhere there was no caulking, there were hundreds of these little strawberry weevils. While I was running around, I was gonna show them to you, but Josh vacuumed them out to clean them up. They're not, what's the word? They're not gonna hurt you, they're not gonna do anything, they're just kind of like a gross little pest. So Josh is gonna take the time, since we have the trim off, and we're gonna fill in this gap here, and then I am gonna make sure I caulk every single piece of trim, along with all the caulk we're gonna replace around the windows. This is clear caulking, and it's a silicone caulking, and you can see it on the actual window frame here. and it was never painted on here. So I'm gonna remove all this caulk today, and then I'll put white caulk on this so you won't see it on the door frame, and it'll be painted when we paint the trim, and you won't even see it at all. So this is Josh putting in that spray foam. It's kind of like that expanding foam that when you put in like an insulation type thing, if it oozes out like this, Josh, do you just like wipe it up? So what he was saying is if you kind of wipe it up with a paper towel while it's wet like this, it's kind of messy. So what we'll do when it dries is we can just take a razor blade and cut off any of the excess, and that way it'll be nice and flush and he can put the trim right on it. Another thing I want to mention about this area is up here, do you see that? There was, for some reason, plywood over this beam. We don't know if this area was an addition or what exactly it was. And the plywood stuck out about 1/2 inch on that drywall. So since Josh is going to be putting new trim, it's the perfect time to go ahead, take that plywood off, and we will have that drywalled and textured so that it can be really flush. And when he puts the trim on this huge window, it's just going to look really, really beautiful. There wouldn't be any better time than basically right now to get it drywalled and finished.
Worth noting though, the plywood's already off. So
yeah, it's over here.
This is a big beam, supporting beam.
The plywood is over there. He took off. I'm not sure why the plywood was on there. We are going to have a professional do that because drywall is one of those things. It's not necessarily the drywall part, but the texture part is we want it to look really flush. Because I want, once Josh has the trim up there, that's going to be a focal point. So Josh did text me and ask me to buy 4 of those, and I didn't see that he asked for more than just 1, so I only bought 1. There's something pretty satisfying about watching it.
For sure.
This right here is a dead strawberry weevil, so they're really small. You can see it as opposed to my finger. The first time Josh and I saw those, we thought they were ticks, which we have ticks in this area, but they're pretty rare. I have only seen a tick ever one time, and so that little bug, I thought it was a tick, and so we kind of freaked out for a minute. But they're totally benign. They're not going to hurt anything. They're just kind of gross, and so I don't want them having access into this house or into this area, and the best way to do that is to try to seal everything off as best as possible. Josh only got half those windows done with that 1 can, so he definitely needs 1 more can. There is a local hardware store I think I'm gonna go run to. It's a pretty good hardware store. It tends to have a lot of stuff. Before I do that though, Josh is hungry, so I'm gonna heat him up his lunch. And that way he can eat this and he can keep his energy going and moving. I'm gonna go run and get more of that foam, and then I'll be back and I'll get straight to work. I just picked up some more foam for him and he's ready to cut it, so let's watch it.
I hope it's satisfying. It might just be kind of lame.
Is it weird? I like the sound of it.
Interesting sound.
Squeaky.
Yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable. It's got more friction to it than I would have.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Turns out I could just use my normal razor. It's kind of... It's alright. It tastes great.
Nice.
Can we do this?
Yeah. I'm glad you're doing this because this is good insulation too.
Mm-hmm. That's mostly why I'm doing it.
Oh.
Is for the insulation.
And I'm doing it for the bugs.
Because we're caulking it, so like bugs aren't going to get in.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
But I do want it to be insulated.
Yeah, that looks really nice, Josh.
Thanks. Thank you. Now I just have to do the rest of it.
Yeah.
Now that we have more foam.
Yeah.
This is a different brand that says won't bow or warp frames or jams, which now has me concerned because I don't think that was posted on this one. Although it seemed pretty low pressure and
yeah, it's pretty squishy.
I'm hoping, I didn't know that was an option, frankly, so.
Well, good thing we're going to use more of that stuff than the other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Josh is going to continue to put the spray foam in that I just picked up for him. I'm going to start caulking these windows because there's some silicone caulking, and we're going to replace that so that when we go to paint, everything's going to look really clean and nice. Some areas, like right here, there was no, oh yeah, there's caulking there. I thought there was no caulk. Maybe that, or no, that's just paint.
Yeah, it's just paint.
So we're going to clean this up so we can have a nice edge there. See how much cleaner that looks already? And then I'll caulk that, and then we'll have a nice clean line there. So much better. This just demonstrates something I appreciate about Josh so much, and it's his attention to detail. That was perfect. Now, I may have not even noticed this, to be quite honest with you, that there was different types of caulking around each window. Some of the windows have this clear caulking, but it's yellowed pretty extremely, and some wasn't caulked at all, and some was used the correct white caulk. And when we're doing such detail work with the trim, I really appreciate, you can see here, this was clear caulk that was painted, and so it looks a little bit, you know, like it's cracking and things, and so it's going to be really nice to just have a clean finish. And this is just points out Josh's personality, where he notices these things, and I'm willing to take the time and fix it so that it can look really clean, and the whole thing can look really, really nice when it's all done. That's what I think makes a job just really sing, is when you really pay attention to those details. I don't always see those details, but he does, so it works well, and I can do some of the labor that it takes to remove most of this. He is demonstrating it here for you, but I'm the one that took quite a few hours to remove all the caulking, because it wasn't just in this room. There were different windows throughout the house that needed it, and while I am doing that, I figured I might as well go back into that powder bathroom and remove this caulking. We took this trim off together last time we were at the house, and I never got to removing this. I want to remove this so that when Josh goes to put the new trim on, it's going to lay nice and flush. Josh and I work pretty well as a team when it comes to home projects, because he can be working on the really more complicated, detail-oriented stuff. I could learn it, I'm sure, but this all needs to be done as well. And so instead of me taking the time to try to learn how to do something that's super, super specific, I can just work on doing kind of the labor and the grunt work, and I don't mind. I typically will put a nice podcast in, maybe listen to some music, an audiobook or something, and I find it quite meditative to just put my headphones in and get to work. Now this is removing all the spray foam. We did let it cure for at least an hour and a half before we started removing it, and I used a couple different implements to remove this spray foam. I used the box cutter in the actual knife, and I used just the blade itself. The problem was, if it was in the knife, then you couldn't cut usually all the way through, and so it just was a little bit more tedious, but then it was a little bit more uncomfortable to hold just the blade, and that project was not quite as enjoyable as I thought it was going to be. We're both always working simultaneously, and while I'm working on the spray foam, Josh is building headers. This is a never-ending project, it seems, but we are getting a lot closer. He likes to build about 3 to 4 of these at a time to save time, but any more then it can get too complicated. So this is him building all the headers for the sunroom. This foam removal is not near as satisfying as I thought it was going to be. I was hoping it was going to be my job to do this, which it is, but it is not very fun. So Josh is getting ready to put up the very first header in this. Oh, well, I guess he did this big doorway open, but out of this window is the first one today. That's pretty big. The part that takes the longest is the part where he's actually building those headers. A lot of math goes into it. A lot of very fine detail work goes into it. And then this is the satisfying part for him, where he gets to just install them. So earlier I was talking about saving these curtain rods, if you watched me when we actually took the curtains down, and we were going to repurpose them, maybe spray paint them and reuse them. But where they are, the brackets that hold the rods must come down because the trim we're putting on is higher. And at this point I've decided I don't think I want to end up putting curtains back up in this room because I want the trim to stand out. It's such beautiful trim Josh is making and working on that I think curtains are just going to cover it up. And with trim this beautiful, I really want it to be kind of a focal piece of the house because we love trim and finish work and I want to be able to see it. Now, that being said, this room is kind of like a greenhouse. And so we might get different blinds or sheer blinds or something so we could close those if it gets too warm in here. But that's something that would be way down the road. I mean, we probably would want to live a whole entire summer here before we decide something like that. But I certainly know that if we do have blinds that we feel like we need to cover the windows because of the heat, I would want to blind something a little bit more sheer so we can at least see through it because one of the main reasons we bought this place is because of the view and I don't want that covered up by having a solid blind. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking in here. If you guys have any suggestions or tips or tricks or anything you're thinking, please let me know. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to continue to sweep up the squeaky foam. While under construction, it feels like one of the patterns is you clean up a mess, you make a mess. You clean a mess, you make a mess. And it just kind of feels like this cyclical type thing. So now that I have made a mess, it is time to clean it up. I have all the spray foam removed, and as I am cleaning up, Josh is continuing to work on the trim. I did take the broom and I swept all the window seals, trying to get any of the caulking or paint chips that came off as I was scraping off there so that we could try to get it nice and clean. Now, this is not a perfect deep clean. Before we paint, I am going to go through every single room and do an extreme deep clean. We're not quite at that point yet, but we do want to try to clean up our messes as we go. So this spray foam was extremely squeaky as I was sweeping it up, and it just was, I couldn't tell if I liked the sound of it or if I hated the sound of it. Josh by the end was super sick of the squeaky foam, and I kind of liked it. So tell me what you think, if you would have enjoyed the squeaky foam or if it would have been like nails on a chalkboard. There are definitely things that I feel like are nails on a chalkboard that most people really enjoy. Like, I cannot touch a cotton ball to save my life, and I do not like the feeling of wet sand. It gives me shivers down my back. And so maybe I am weird and I like the sound of squeaky foam. Now, this was the next day, but I wanted to go ahead and show it because it's the only thing I showed or filmed the day after. We found some of the paint in the garage that these floors were painted, and the trim that was on here before around the windows was thicker than what we're putting in, and we thought it would be no time like the present to go ahead and get a layer of this paint so that we wouldn't have to try to butt up against our new trim. I think I'm going to keep this color because I like it. It just depends on what wall color I keep. One thing we know is we are going to paint it a dark color, and so if we can at least get a dark color up underneath the trim, then it will be a lot easier when we go to paint. These floors were in okay condition, the paint wise, when we bought the house, but now that we've been doing construction, they definitely need a coat of paint. That feels fantastic to officially have a project done today that I didn't even know we were doing. And I love doing that where I can start something and finish it. Even though Josh put the foam in, I was able to come in and remove the excess. And that feels like it was super productive. I forgot I was going to show you what it looks like, what they did yesterday. This closet was not finished at all. It's still drying. You can definitely tell. You can see the seams here, but once I paint, you won't be able to see the seams. You could see the paper and the mud before. So the only reason you can see the seams is you can just tell that this is blue and this is white, but it's all textured beautifully, and once it's painted, you won't be able to see that. And then over here, it looks so much better as well. You can see it's still drying. This was the worst spot right here. I don't know if at one point there was maybe a window here or something, but it didn't show up well. You could totally see the tape and everything. It's not completely dry, so I don't really want to touch it more than that. But once this is painted, you will never know that you could see all of those seams before. So I'm really, really, really thrilled with the results. In this closet, we're gonna put the same carpet that we're putting in here. And so now Josh just has to put the trim on, and then we can paint and get the carpet installed. We've decided, or Josh had the thought, I think it's probably the right move, is not to put up the window trim in here or around these two windows next to this window that needs the new sheetrock. Because if you look up in this corner, we are not sheetrockers, but it seems like it would be a lot easier if they would take this whole section off of the sheetrock instead of trying to patch that little skinny piece. So we're thinking if that's the case, if it's easier for them to take that whole piece off, then we really shouldn't put that piece of trim that's gonna be right next to it, because it's gonna be touching that wall, and the likelihood of it getting scuffed or having to come down anyway is going to be an issue. So I'm really glad that Josh had that forward thinking. It looks like not a ton of progress was made in this room currently, but there was a ton of progress made because Josh has made all of the components to go around all of these windows, and that's the hard part. Actually installing them and nailing them up is the easy part, which means once this sheetrock is in, it'll only take him probably 20 minutes, half an hour to go ahead and put all the pieces up in this entire room. So on that note, we are gonna call it a night, and then I can show you something. See, here are all parts of his components. I don't think that's every single piece that he needs for that room, but a whole bunch of them.
One more.
What was that?
Just one more piece.
Just one more. We got over the week, we come up here maybe every other day after work, and we work on more trim, and he got all this main living room done on this side of the room. So the base still needs to be done in here, so that's probably what we're gonna end up working on tomorrow. And then we'll move on to this door and those two little windows and that door. So I want to say a huge thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with us as we got random stuff done today. I feel like it was a productive day. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. If you guys are enjoying this, I can put a playlist from the very beginning where we started to where we are right now. If you want to see more about my garden, because we spent a little bit of time in there this morning, I can put a full garden tour down here. I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.